The story is about a man named Sasaki who starts his day by taking out the trash and is greeted by a young girl, his neighbor. He responds kindly and then heads to work on the train. At his workplace, one of his junior colleagues asked him to review a settlement report. Sasaki offered some suggestions for improvement and kindly volunteered to handle the report. His colleague was pleased with this, and it made Sasaki think that the right person was chosen for the job. While working, Sasaki overheard a conversation about a girl who had adopted a cat. He found this intriguing and watched a cat video with great interest. He thought the cat was adorable and wished he could have a pet of his own someday. Sasaki's boss assigned him more work, which was quite typical in their average-sized company with average earnings and wages. Sasaki admitted that he was barely making ends meet, but he lacked the courage to switch jobs. The job market had not been kind to him in the past. However, Sasaki found fulfillment in having a job where he felt needed and believed he was contributing to society. After work, his junior colleague invited him to dinner, but Sasaki declined, mentioning that he was low on cash for the month. His colleague kindly offered to treat him, but Sasaki took a rain check, hoping for another invitation. Later that evening, Sasaki went to a convenience store to buy dinner, but had no luck in a lottery for a free item. He returned home, and the little girl from earlier welcomed him back. Sasaki had dinner while watching cat videos, thoroughly enjoying them. One day, Sasaki visited a pet store and noticed that the cats were quite expensive. He wished he could afford to have a pet, perhaps even a dog. As he browsed, he heard a bird chirping, and it sounded like it was saying "pick me." Curious, Sasaki followed the sound and discovered a Java sparrow. He found it cute and surprisingly affordable, priced at 3,000 yen. Sasaki decided to bring the sparrow home, feeling a bit lonely with his 40th birthday approaching. Sasaki wondered about a suitable name for the sparrow. And to his surprise, the sparrow introduced itself as Pircarlo, an inhabitant of another world and a star sage. Sasaki thought this bird was quite talkative, even for its species. Despite thinking that Pircarlo was already a splendid name, Sasaki decided to name the bird Peeps. This choice didn't seem to please the bird, but Sasaki found even its displeasure cute. Sasaki couldn't believe he was having a normal conversation with a bird. He remembered what Yamada from the pet shop had said about getting Peeps accustomed to human contact and was determined to make it happen. Sasaki wanted to understand if Java sparrows were generally good at communicating, so he engaged in more conversation with Peeps. He asked Peeps about his dinner preferences, and to his surprise, the bird mentioned Kobe beef Shada brand, claiming it was the best. Sasaki couldn't believe a bird had such refined tastes. He apologized to Peeps for being unable to afford it and offered pork ribs instead. Peeps responded by suggesting that Sasaki should earn the money if he didn't have it. He shared that he had been exiled from another world and had chosen this new form of life. Peeps believed in living life as one desired, rather than trying to fit in with others. Sasaki could relate to this, given his corporate job. Peeps explained that to achieve his goals, he needed assistance from someone in this world, and he hoped Sasaki would help him accumulate riches. Sasaki tells Peeps that he'll do anything for him. Then, Peeps uses magic to create a special bond between them. He gives some of his magic powers to Sasaki and tells him they're now connected. Peeps asks Sasaki to open his cage. Even though Sasaki is confused, he decides to go along with it and opens the cage. Peeps sits on Sasaki's shoulder, which makes Sasaki feel happy. The bird says he can use his old magic powers through Sasaki's body. Next, Peeps uses a spell to take Sasaki to a different world. Sasaki is amazed to see this new place. Peeps tells him this is where he used to live before he became a bird. They're in a town called Batrium in a kingdom. The story then shifts to Sasaki at his office. His coworker is surprised to see Sasaki there so early since everyone else is late because of a train delay. He wonders if Sasaki started getting up earlier. Sasaki says no, and then his coworker asks to talk privately. In private, the coworker suggests that they start a new business together. He plans to quit his job next month and thinks having someone experienced like Sasaki would be helpful. He promises Sasaki a better deal than his current job. Sasaki asks for time to think about it, mentioning he's busy with personal stuff. His coworker is surprised when Sasaki says he just got a pet. Sasaki felt that what was happening was just as he had expected, but he wanted to clarify that he wasn't making things up. His life had taken a remarkable turn since his visit to another world, and he had a new goal in mind. Sasaki mentioned that thanks to Peeps' teleportation ability, he could now avoid crowded trains, which had made his life much more pleasant. Because of this newfound convenience, Sasaki agreed with Peeps' idea of establishing a business between the two worlds. As a result, he started buying some items to sell in the other world. Initially, he had aspirations to trade with upper-class nobles, but he realized that it might be challenging to start with them right away. So, they decided to begin by doing business with the town's local merchants first. Sasaki purchased the necessary items and even won a chocolate bar in a lottery. Upon returning home, the little girl next door welcomed him back. Hearing her stomach growling, Sasaki kindly gave her the chocolate bar, explaining that he didn't like chocolate and had won it for free. Then, he headed inside and ventured into the other world with his goods. In the other world, Sasaki visited the Herman Trading Company, which was run by the town's nobles. He asked Peeps if he should enter the company with Peeps perched on his shoulder, and Peeps informed him that Sasaki could consider him as his familiar. Sasaki successfully sold the items he had brought with him for 400 gold coins, noting that if converted, it would amount to 400 million yen. He also remarked on the high prices of crafted goods in this world. Mark, the company's president, inquired about the source of Sasaki's pens and paper. Sasaki couldn't reveal his source but made a promise not to sell those items to any other store as compensation. Sasaki continued to travel between the two worlds to conduct his business and explore the local cuisine in the other world. Peeps also provided him with lessons on magic. Sasaki attempted to learn the teleportation spell from Peeps, but he found it too complex and decided to take his time to master it gradually. One day, during a break at his office, Sasaki had some spare time and decided to practice casting spells. He recited the incantation for a fire spell and miraculously managed to invoke it successfully on his very first try. But this activates the fire alarm and Sasaki runs away from the scene. Later, he pays a visit to Viscount Muller, the noble who rules this land, and the Viscount carefully examines the goods he brought. Seeing this, Sasaki realizes that he can't simply bring anything here, and he should be more selective about his products in the future. Muller inquires if these goods are common in Sasaki's continent or considered special items accessible only to a select few, like the nobility. Sasaki explains that only a few people possess these goods, and Muller ponders if this implies that Sasaki holds a high status in his own right. He expresses his reluctance to engage in one-sided dealings with someone of equal status to a noble, and Sasaki understands the need to respond carefully. He then shares his story, stating that he is a craftsman who ended up on this continent after his ship wrecked. The goods he brought today are those he had with him, as well as new ones he crafted. Muller comprehends the situation and proposes that Sasaki sells his goods to the Herman Trading Company from now on, with the possibility of bringing some directly to him. He promises to purchase them at a premium price and grants Sasaki permission to visit his mansion whenever he pleases. Muller encourages Sasaki to inform him of anything noteworthy in town that could benefit his territory. This connection with the feudal lord helps Sasaki's trade between the two worlds run smoothly. With his sales, progress in learning magic, and management of his restaurant, Sasaki's life in the other world is becoming more comfortable. Later, while heading to his office, Sasaki attends his junior's farewell party, where they enjoy food and drinks. During the party, news reports about a random attacker on the loose, and Sasaki's junior asks him if he has considered going independent. Sasaki wonders why his junior is so insistent, and his junior mentions that Sasaki seems full of energy lately, radiating an I-can-do-it aura. Sasaki jokingly attributes it to his new bed, which allows him to sleep better. He's been staying in an inn in the other world where the beds are quite large, so his own bed at home feels cramped now. He contemplates switching between the two beds. On his way home after the party, he encounters a dangerous situation. He narrowly dodges ice shards hurled at him and witnesses a man using superpowers to attack a woman. Initially, he considers fleeing but becomes concerned for the woman's safety, suspecting that the attacker may be the one from the news. Sasaki intervenes by using an ice shard to freeze the assailant, though he doesn't want to kill him. He's unsure how to stop the spell, but the woman intervenes, turning the ice into water, and then points a gun at Sasaki. She inquires if Sasaki is a psychic and where he's from. She asks if he was the one who used the ice attack. Sasaki confirms his involvement and explains that he recently discovered these powers. The woman is astonished that she was saved by a random psychic and asks Sasaki to come with her, assuring him that she won't harm him. Sasaki wonders if they might be magicians like him and hopes to learn more from her. He requests permission to go home first and change clothes, as he'll be staying the night. Sasaki explains that he has work the following day, but the woman tells him not to worry as her organization will handle it. Later, Sasaki shares all the details with Peeps, who remarks that he can't sense any mana from the woman. Peeps suggests that she might be using a different phenomenon from magic, and speculates that their worlds might have similar phenomena but operate on entirely different principles. Sasaki realizes that this could be a groundbreaking discovery, and Peeps agrees that they should learn more from her. Sasaki invites Peeps to accompany him, and Peeps agrees. Sasaki is about to leave when his neighbor, the little girl, asks if he's going out. Sasaki confirms this, and she expresses sympathy for him being out so late. She then asks if they can talk for a moment, but Sasaki, in a hurry, suggests they chat another time. The girl agrees, and Sasaki proceeds to meet with the woman, introducing himself as Hashizaki. Sasaki, accompanied by his pet sparrow, heads to the organization with Hashizaki. During their journey, she explains to Sasaki that psychics are individuals whose powers spontaneously manifest, similar to magicians. The manifestation rate is 1 in every 100,000 people, and once the abilities appear, they don't change. These abilities vary from person to person, and while there's no record of someone manifesting additional abilities, their existing powers can grow stronger with use. Hashizaki reveals that her ability allows her to manipulate water movement and temperature, which Sasaki finds distinct from magic. Hashizaki mentions that many of these abilities are dangerous, and some psychics turn to crime. Her role is to apprehend such individuals, which surprises Sasaki. She explains that as a general rule, anyone who manifests psychic abilities must register with the country's organization for managing psychics. Sasaki admits he didn't know such an organization existed, to which Hashizaki responds that it's a national secret. They arrive at the organization's building, known as the Paranormal Phenomenon Countermeasure Bureau, and Hashizaki informs Sasaki that this will be his workplace from now on. Sasaki is taken aback by this revelation, as he hadn't anticipated joining the organization. Hashizaki mentions that she registered him a while ago and ushers him inside. Hashizaki tells Sasaki that he can expect favorable treatment, as he'll be considered a government official and receive a handsome salary. She mentions that he'll learn more during training and asks him about his powers. Sasaki, wanting to avoid combat, downplays his abilities, stating that he can only shoot icicles, which he demonstrates. Observing this, Hashizaki realizes that Sasaki can create ice from nothing, which excites her. She explains that she can manipulate water's movement and temperature but cannot create water, requiring her to carry water bottles. With Sasaki around, she would no longer have to worry about that and could undertake more perilous missions. Sasaki thinks she might be a workaholic and suspects she's already planning his involvement in her next mission. He expresses a preference for safe tasks aligned with his skills. Hashizaki mentions that a psychic's paycheck has no limit, and they earn more the harder they work. Sasaki finds himself in a room at the bureau and wishes he could sleep. However, he needs to stock up and visit the other world. He also has to pay French and decides not to use his magic here to avoid surveillance. He takes a walk with Peeps, who informs him that they are being followed. Sasaki anticipated this and knows that stocking up is impossible. He wants to explain his situation to everyone at the bureau and hopes they can help. Peeps suggests that several hours in the other world will only be a few minutes here, so Sasaki should go there under the pretext of using the restroom. Sasaki teleports to the other world from a convenience store restroom, informs Mark about needing more time for their next deal, and pays French's wages. The next morning, someone rings Sasaki's doorbell at 6 a.m. It turns out to be Hashizaki, who tells him it's time for work. Sasaki hesitates, wanting to report to someone higher up and verify if this is a legitimate workplace. Hashizaki expresses annoyance with his hesitation and suggests they stop by the bureau on the way. She asks him to get dressed. The section chief of Hashizaki's department, Akutsu, arrives and comments on Hashizaki's enthusiasm for work but advises her not to involve Sasaki without permission. Akutsu introduces himself as Sasaki's immediate superior and gives Sasaki a new phone. He explains that they will contact him using this phone and asks him to carry it at all times for emergencies. Sasaki isn't too happy about having to carry the phone around, and he considers leaving it in the other world to avoid being tracked. Akutsu, his superior, then leaves, telling Sasaki to contact him if needed. The scene shifts to Sasaki undergoing a medical examination at the bureau and learning more about the agency. He discovers that the bureau is a secret government ministry, and employees must keep its existence hidden. They are officially considered police sergeants but can't reveal their true roles to outsiders. Sasaki realizes this explains why Hashizaki carries a gun and asks about her, suspecting he might be partnered with her. People tell him she can be troublesome. Sasaki finishes his training and receives an allowance of 1 million yen for job preparations. He decides to use this money to stock up and returns home, where he meets the little girl from earlier. She gives him cookies as thanks for the chocolate and asks if the woman with him is his girlfriend. Sasaki clarifies that she's his superior, and the girl is surprised she looks so young. Afterward, Sasaki hears Peeps making noise and takes him for a walk. Peeps informs him that someone bugged his place while he was out. Sasaki asks if they saw him checking the internet, but Peeps says no. Sasaki then disables the camera and microphone at his house. Akutsu calls and mentions Sasaki's talent, but Sasaki asks him not to spy on him again, or it will affect his cooperation. Akutsu apologizes, explaining it was a test to see how Sasaki would react. He believes Sasaki's honesty and skills are valuable for managing psychics. Sasaki understands but remains cautious of Akutsu. As Sasaki contemplates his situation, Peeps wonders if he'll stock up on supplies that night. Sasaki decides to do it another time and realizes his dream of a relaxing life in another world is still distant. Meanwhile, Akatsu sees potential in Sasaki's skills for the organization. Next day, Sasaki practices magic in another world. Peeps is surprised that Sasaki has learned intermediate spells so quickly. Sasaki credits the magic Peeps shared with him, but Peeps points out that Sasaki's progress is remarkable on its own. He explains that it typically takes over a decade for magic users in this world to reach intermediate level, making Sasaki's advancement in just weeks extraordinary. Sasaki shares that he's learned recovery and lightning magic in today's session. He records these spells in his smartphone, which Peeps notes as diligent. Sasaki explains the need to keep track of all his learned spells, admitting that memorizing them is tough. Peeps suggests using a grimoire, leading Sasaki to ask where he could find one. Peeps reveals that Sasaki's smartphone, containing the written chants, essentially serves as a grimoire. Then, Sasaki remembers they have a meeting with Mark and plans to eat at a restaurant afterward, to which Peeps expresses a craving for meat. Next, we see Sasaki showing walkie-talkies to Mark, who is amazed by them. Sasaki explains they run on fuel, showing him the batteries. He mentions the limitation of the devices stopping once the battery runs out, but Mark remains impressed. Sasaki is pleased, relieved he won't be stuck with unsold stock. Mark thanks Sasaki for providing such innovative items, and Sasaki apologizes for any delay. Mark reassures him it's fine and inquires if things have calmed down for Sasaki. Sasaki agrees that things have settled down, but deep down, he feels they haven't. Mark then surprises Sasaki by asking to buy all his walkie-talkies, promising a great offer. Sasaki is curious about why, and Mark reveals that Viscount Muller instructed him to purchase any exceptional products Sasaki brings. Mark explains that this request is likely due to rising tensions with a neighboring country, and he advises Sasaki to stay cautious. The scene shifts to Sasaki meeting French outside his restaurant, which is doing well. Sasaki hands French his monthly pay and some new recipes, asking him to try making them. French suggests discussing the details inside. After explaining the recipes and having lunch, Sasaki leaves the restaurant. The following morning, Sasaki gets a call from Hashizaki for admission. She notices he's still half asleep and wonders if he missed calls from the chief. Realizing he has ignored several calls from the chief, Sasaki rushes to the office, apologizing for his tardiness. There, he sees other psychics and the chief introduces Sasaki to them, noting he'll mostly work with Hashizaki. The others leave after greetings. Sasaki then learns about his mission, a mass arrest operation. The chief explains they're targeting a group operating in the city, composed of unregistered psychics. Sasaki questions if the arrests are due to the group's refusal to register, but the chief clarifies it's because one of their members misused his powers to cause harm. Sasaki realizes the man who attacked Hashizaki is part of this group, and the chief adds that other members are likely involved too. The chief explains they've been investigating this group for some time and have recently located their hideout. The immediate goal is to apprehend them to prevent more incidents. The scene shifts to Sasaki and other psychics heading to the group's hideout. Sasaki is anxious, and Hashizaki advises him to stay calm, reminding him he won't be fighting. Sasaki feels vulnerable, even in a support role, but the other psychics reassure him, confident in their superior abilities. Hashizaki chides them for potentially influencing Sasaki negatively, but they just laugh. Sasaki asks Hashizaki if she's scared of the confrontation, but she shares that the high risk comes with high financial rewards, which she finds exciting. Hashizaki tells Sasaki she's relying on him for support, and he promises to do his best. At the hideout, Sasaki wishes he had learned a barrier spell. The chief, monitoring from the control room, orders them to begin the operation. The psychics enter the hideout, calling for surrender, but find it empty, leading to confusion and suspicion. Suddenly, they hear the screams of officers in the control room through their communication devices. Communication is lost, and attackers use bowling balls and pins in the hideout as weapons against Sasaki and his group. Sasaki and Hashizaki take cover, with Sasaki first thinking the attack is wind-based but then realizing it's psychokinesis. The psychics with them panic, saying they expected these opponents to be weaker. Some flee, and others are quickly defeated, leaving only Sasaki and Hashizaki. Hashizaki asks Sasaki for backup as she moves forward. Sasaki hands her an icicle, which she transforms into water to block incoming bowling pins and balls. Sasaki feels they are only defending and tries to find the enemy psychic. Suddenly, the enemy psychic lifts one of their own and drops him, but Hashizaki catches him with her water. She urges Sasaki to escape, fearing for his safety, but Sasaki refuses to leave her side. Hashizaki appreciates Sasaki's loyalty, and he internally admits he can't abandon her without feeling guilty or committing a serious crime like desertion. Then, one of the enemy psychics appears, surprised by their resistance. Hashizaki quickly turns her water bottle into ice, surprising the enemy with her ability to control water temperature. Hashizaki attacks, but the girl dodges and eventually knocks Hashizaki out. The enemy psychic calls out for Sasaki, threatening to kill Hashizaki if he doesn't show himself. Realizing their squad is defeated and unsure of the enemy's numbers, Saki knows he can't outrun her. He reveals himself, and the girl notes he's new. Sasaki introduces himself, and the girl finds him unsettling, guessing he's the source of Hashizaki's water. Sasaki confirms this and is surprised she figured it out so quickly. He tries to regain some advantage, commenting on their fearsome abilities and control over the area. Curious, Sasaki asks the girl for the name of their group, and she's shocked he doesn't know them. Sasaki ponders if the girl's group is well known, and she deduces that Sasaki must be a new member of his organization. Sasaki regrets revealing his inexperience, but realizes it confirms there are more enemies present. He tells her he's a recent recruit and expresses interest in meeting her allies, hoping to determine their number. The girl notes Sasaki's unusual calmness in such a situation. Sasaki responds that his lack of knowledge is his only advantage at the moment. He asks again to meet her companions, but she refuses. Sasaki is disappointed and prepares for his next move. He chants a spell and launches a lightning attack at the girl, who narrowly dodges. She's surprised by the attack. Meanwhile, the psychokinesis user tries to hit Sasaki with bowling balls and pins, but Sasaki defends himself with his lightning spell, accidentally taking out 2 hidden psychics. He assumes these were all the adversaries. The girl questions what's Sasaki, and he simply describes himself as a newcomer. He then offers her a deal. He'll let her leave peacefully if she promises to keep quiet about what happened. Sasaki suggests they end the confrontation in a draw, preferring to avoid further risk and injury. The girl agrees to his terms and then intriguingly asks if Sasaki would consider joining their group. Sasaki declines the girl's invitation to join her group, saying he prefers to stick with the crowd. She tells him they'd welcome him if he ever changes his mind, and Sasaki assures her he'll reach out if he does. Before she departs, Sasaki inquires about his superiors, and she agrees to release them since the fight is over. Following her departure, Sasaki reports to the chief that the enemy retreated voluntarily. The chief accepts his explanation and apologizes for the tough first assignment. He advises Sasaki to head home and rest. Before leaving, Sasaki checks on Hashizaki, who assures him she's fine. Hashizaki then asks if Sasaki is free, and he agrees, thinking she might be upset if he said he needed rest. She expresses a desire to thank him properly, and the scene shifts to them at a fancy hotel. Hashizaki thanks Sasaki for saving her, but he modestly says he was just doing his job, regretting his inability to prevent her injury. Hashizaki insists he still saved her life. They order food. Hashizaki gets orange juice and Sasaki beer. Sasaki asks if she doesn't drink, and Hashizaki reveals she's underage, only 16, and dresses maturely so her colleagues take her seriously. She also attends school when not working. Curious, Sasaki asks why she's so dedicated to her job, wondering if she has other high school interests. Hashizaki explains the job pays well. They toast to Sasaki's first mission, and Hashizaki looks forward to his continued support. On his way home, Sasaki sees a girl rummaging through a garbage can for food. He contemplates reporting her but decides it's too much hassle, and he just wants to rest. Suddenly, the girl disappears and reappears flying, then vanishes into a portal. We then see Sasaki is shown feeding Shadobrian, a delicacy made from Kobe beef, to Peeps as a gesture of gratitude for the support Peeps has provided. As Peeps enjoys the meal, Sasaki reflects on how adorable his companion is. Sasaki shares details about his day with Peeps, who empathizes, feeling that Sasaki's day sounds exhausting. Sasaki expresses regret over not learning barrier magic, to which Peeps suggests that healing magic would also have been beneficial. Agreeing with Peeps, Sasaki requests Peeps' assistance with magic training after his upcoming meeting with Mark, a request Peeps happily accepts. Sasaki looks forward to the training, anticipating a reward of enjoying French's cooking and the comfort of a fluffy bed afterward. However, Sasaki's plans take an unexpected turn following a conversation with Viscount Muller. Muller informs him about an impending war, revealing that the king has summoned him to the front lines. This news aligns with Mark's earlier predictions, causing Sasaki to realize the seriousness of the situation. Viscount Muller elaborates on the threat posed by the Ajin Empire, emphasizing its vast size and powerful army, which outnumbers their own by double. Muller expresses concern about the potential damage to the city if the enemy troops were to reach it. He then seeks Sasaki's support in the upcoming conflict, leaving Sasaki to contemplate his role in the looming war. Sasaki finds himself in a difficult position when Viscount Muller requests his assistance for the upcoming war. Sasaki, who sees himself as just a humble craftsman, feels unequipped for such a task and expresses his reluctance to be involved in the war. However, Muller acknowledges Sasaki's identity and emphasizes the significant contribution his craft can make to the war effort. He proposes that Sasaki become their exclusive supplier during the war. Muller shares with Sasaki the king's orders to build strongholds and supply the front line. As a nobleman serving the crown, Muller has no choice but to comply with these orders, or he risks losing his status. Muller explains the logistical challenges they face. It takes 2 weeks by carriage to reach the front lines, and organizing the necessary supplies within a month seems nearly impossible. He has begun negotiations with traders, including the Herman Trading Company, but the soaring prices of goods could devastate the city's economy if they are forced to comply. In response to these difficulties, Sasaki suggests abandoning the kingdom might be the wisest choice. Muller counters this by asking if Sasaki has heard of the Star Sage. Sasaki denies knowledge of it, prompting Muller to recount the kingdom's history. About a century ago, the kingdom was prosperous, rich in magical technology, until exploitation by certain nobles drove the mages away. The Star Sage, a skilled mage, maintained peace after their departure but was later killed by nobles who envied his favor with the king. Since then, the kingdom has suffered from corruption and decline. Muller reflects on how the nobles brought this fate upon themselves and expresses his resolve to protect the people of the land until his last breath, rejecting Sasaki's suggestion to abandon the kingdom. Sasaki apologizes for his impractical advice and agrees to fulfill Muller's expectations. In return, he asks Muller to make him a promise, showing his commitment to supporting the kingdom in its time of need. Sasaki reassures the owner of the Kepler Trading Company that the goods he's purchasing will be put to good use. The owner, noting Sasaki's confidence, observes that Sasaki doesn't seem to be from the continent. Sasaki explains his advantage in moving around under the current circumstances and believes that winning merchants' trust is more about profitability than rank or reputation. The owner agrees and inquires if Sasaki plans to deal with other trading houses. Sasaki commits exclusively to the Kepler Trading Company and agrees to pay in large gold coins from the kingdom. Later, Sasaki presents a warehouse full of foodstuffs to Muller, who is astonished by the quantity acquired in such a short time. Muller expresses gratitude, acknowledging that Sasaki's efforts have saved many lives. He wonders if Sasaki possesses the same instant travel ability as the Star Sage. Sasaki credits Peeps for the transportation, but keeps it confidential for Peeps' safety, requesting Muller to maintain secrecy. Curious, Sasaki asks Muller about the origin of the Star Sage title. Muller explains that the title stemmed from the Star Sage's vast knowledge of spells, akin to the number of stars in the sky. Despite the title's grandeur, the Star Sage was bashful about it. Sasaki internally notes that Peeps seems quite fond of the nickname. Muller thanks Sasaki again, noting that his actions have provided some flexibility in their preparations. Muller reflects on his conversation about the Star Sage with Sasaki, regretting not having been as courageous as Sasaki, which might have saved the Star Sage. Some time later, Sasaki learns of Viscount Muller's death. In a subsequent scene, Sasaki talks with Akatsu, who informs him of a promotion due to the numerous vacancies created by a recent incident. Akatsu appoints Sasaki as an inspector, acknowledging the need for capable individuals in urgent positions. Akatsu acknowledges that Sasaki might not be thrilled about his promotion, given the circumstances, but hopes Sasaki understands the necessity of it. Sasaki accepts the promotion, and Akatsu informs him that his next task involves working with Hashizaki to recruit psychics. Sasaki isn't keen on partnering with Hashizaki, but Akatsu explains the various methods of recruiting psychics, including approaching wild psychics based on police reports and negotiating with irregular psychics. Considering his recent experiences with irregulars, Sasaki decides to accept working with Hashizaki. The scene shifts to Sasaki returning to his apartment, where he encounters the little girl he's met before. She comments on Sasaki's busy schedule and offers to give him a shoulder massage as a thank you for his kindness. Sasaki, who remembers similar offers from her in the past, politely declines. Instead, he gives her some bread he had purchased earlier, which she gratefully accepts. Inside his apartment, Sasaki finds Peeps watching the news. Turning off the TV, Sasaki brings out cake for the two of them. However, Peeps remains silent and doesn't touch the cake. Sasaki, sensing something is amiss, asks Peeps about his relationship with the recently deceased Viscount Muller. Peeps reveals that they occasionally shared drinks and expresses his surprise at Muller's untimely death. Sasaki inquires if there are spells in Peeps' world capable of resurrecting the dead. Peeps confirms that such magic doesn't exist in his world. Sasaki adds that there's no such method in their world either. Peeps, showing his philosophical side, accepts this reality, stating that he understands everything alive must eventually die. Sasaki understands Peeps' philosophical acceptance of life and death but still offers his support should Peeps need anything. Peeps lightly comments on Sasaki's ability to sweet talk, appreciating his gesture. The story then shifts to Sasaki's return to the alternate world, where he checks in with French at the restaurant. French informs Sasaki that their old master hasn't returned, but many people are leaving the city, shaken by the news of Viscount Muller's death. Sasaki acknowledges the tense atmosphere. Soon after, Mark rushes in to inform Sasaki that they've been summoned by Viscount Muller's butler. At Muller's estate, they're introduced to Elsa, Muller's daughter. Elsa greets them reluctantly, and the butler reveals there's a succession dispute following the Viscount's death. Elsa candidly criticizes her brother Kai, fearing the downfall of their house if he takes charge. The butler, slightly embarrassed by her bluntness, mentions Elsa's closer relationship with her other brother, Maximilian. Mark inquires about their role in this situation. The butler requests the Herman Trading Company to look after Elsa until the dispute is resolved. Initially hesitant, Mark agrees, feeling indebted to the late Viscount. The butler assures he'll manage Elsa's brothers and the estate during her absence, while Mark commits to taking good care of Elsa. Sasaki, curious about his own role in this meeting, is told by the butler about his tools that enable communication and visualization over long distances. The butler expresses interest in purchasing one of each. Although Sasaki feels something might be amiss, he sees no immediate problem in selling these tools to the Viscount's butler and agrees to the transaction. The butler expresses his gratitude as Sasaki ponders the situation. This brings an end to our episode. If you enjoyed it, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more anime recaps.